Imagine holding on to heartbreak for 20 years, reliving every hurtful word, every betrayal, and every moment of self-doubt. She thought she would never move on with her life, that her ex-husband's choices would haunt her forever, especially since he left her for her best friend. But what if the pain you've been carrying doesn't have to last a lifetime? In this video, I'm going to take you inside her journey, how I fast-tracked her healing and allowed her to release the hurt and the pain from the past, to set herself free and to move on with her life once and for all. When Jane, not her real name, a 65-year-old mother of 3 came to see me, she felt like she had been stuck for years, for the past 20 years in fact, because of the trauma of her divorce. Despite the marriage ending 20 years ago, she was left feeling unworthy, unlovable, lacking self-confidence, full of self-doubt, and she was unable to recover. This meant that she was unwilling and unable to enter into any romantic relationships with any other man because she was not willing to get hurt ever again, while her ex-husband went on to remarry her best friend. What motivated her to come and see me was the fact that her son was getting married, and the thought of her being in the same room as her ex-husband and his wife really sent her anxiety levels skyrocketing, and she just knew that she would be an emotional wreck and wouldn't be able to hold it together. And her greatest fear was the fact that she would ruin her son's wedding. So she was desperate to let go of the hurt and the pain from the past, let go of the trauma, and gain control of her emotions. Even though Jane's marriage ended in betrayal and heartbreak, it didn't start off that way. In the beginning, the relationship started off, as you would imagine, as a typical love story where opposites attract. She was that quiet, gentle, sensitive soul, and he was the charming, magnetic person that people were just attracted to naturally. And things started off as you would imagine. It was all smooth sailing and they had 3 children and everything was going fine, but there were issues in the relationship, and it sounds like there was a lack of communication where he wasn't being honest with her. So she was left in the dark about his feelings and his unhappiness. And so, as you can imagine, he started looking for happiness outside the marriage, and she was blindsided by the betrayal when she eventually found out about the affair. But to make matters worse, it wasn't just the betrayal that scarred her, it was also the emotional and physical abuse. You see, he needed his ego stroked to feel good, and perhaps she wasn't stroking his ego enough to make him feel good enough. The way some people make themselves feel better is by making other people feel worse. So he would always put her down, and he would say things like, "You're lucky I married you because no one else would." This slowly chipped away at her self-confidence and her self-esteem and filled her with self-doubt. But as I mentioned before, the ultimate betrayal was when she found out about the affair that he was having with her best friend. A double whammy. She not only was losing her husband, she was losing her best friend at the same time. Now, she had old-fashioned values, and she didn't want the marriage to end. She wanted to keep the family together for the 3 children. And he actually filled her with some hope that there was a chance to reconcile the marriage because he told her, "Don't give up on me." So that gave her some hope that he still loved her deep down inside. But that wasn't the case. One day he came home and said, "I'm not happy. I'm leaving you." And that was it. That was the end of the marriage. And she was absolutely devastated and heartbroken. And she never recovered from that moment on. And what made matters worse was that her ex-husband went on to marry her best friend. Unable to process the abuse and the betrayal and the heartbreak, that trauma just got buried deep down inside of her and it got stuck. So she got stuck emotionally in the trauma and she was unable to break free and move forward. And so she, as a protective mechanism, she isolated herself from the world, from other men, from relationships. And she was so afraid of getting hurt that she refused to put herself out there ever again. So she led a lonely life raising those 3 children. And as all mothers do, what she did was she just put all of her heart and soul into her children and sacrificed herself, sacrificed her life, which is a noble act of service. Unfortunately, what happens when the chicks leave the nest? And now she's an empty nester and she doesn't have those children to care for because they've all grown up, left the nest and starting families of their own. Now she's all alone and she's lost herself. She doesn't know who she is. She's lost her passion. She's lost her interest. She's lost herself. And I see this all the time. It's a very common story for women who lose themselves in motherhood, forget about themselves and live their lives for their children. And then when their children grow up, they feel absolutely lost. But I digress. So now with her son's wedding looming on the horizon, she knew she finally had to do something about it. So that's when she reached out to me for help. In our sessions, I used age regression under hypnosis to allow her subconscious mind to take us back to where it all began. And unsurprisingly, it took us back to when she found out about the affair, the ultimate betrayal and lack of trust from her husband and her best friend. The reason why I do this is to uncover a new perspective. You see, in hindsight, we have 20/20 vision, which means we now have more information available to us now than we did back then. So if we take the information that we have available to us now back to that event, we can see things in a different light. So we took everything that Jane now knows about her husband and her best friend and the events of the past and took it back to that moment so she can reprocess those events and see it from a different perspective to gain a new insight of that situation and to process and release all of the hurt and the pain from that event to set her free. She could finally acknowledge that it had nothing to do with her, that her husband's choice to have an affair with her best friend said more about him and his values than it did about her. It said that he was untrustworthy and he was unfaithful and he was deceitful and he's not good enough. This allowed her to reprocess the experience, to release the hurt, the pain, the blame, the lack of self-worth, the lack of self-esteem, all of the negative emotions that she had been holding on to, and let them go. Letting go of the limiting belief that she wasn't good enough. Despite the positive breakthroughs, Jane still worried about how she would feel at her son's wedding. Anticipating that her ex-husband's magnetic personality would overshadow her and leave her feeling alone and isolated and re-triggering all of those past traumas, hurt and pain, she was still worried about how she would be. In hypnosis, we uncovered a deeply ingrained belief that she felt worthless and unlovable, rooted in her husband's belittling words that no one would marry her, that you're lucky I married you, that no one else will have you. Together we worked at releasing this belief and freeing her from the negative emotions that she had held on to since the marriage. The process wasn't easy. In one session, we confronted the moment where her ex-husband said, "Don't give up on me," realizing that this was just another one of his manipulative tactics to keep her tethered to him emotionally. Recognizing the abuse for what it was, Jane was able to detach, understanding that the words were not about her worth, but about his ego. As Jane worked through those emotional layers, she began to feel lighter, more resilient, gained in self-confidence and self-esteem and self-worth. She was finally ready to imagine herself at her son's wedding, feeling confident, calm, at ease, in the presence of her ex-husband and wife, where she was in control of the situation and she would actually approach him first and say hi first and take control of the conversation and end the conversation when she wanted to. This helped her to feel more empowered about the situation and empowered in herself. In hypnosis, we did a final cord cutting exercise where we finally released all emotional ties that she had existing to her ex-husband, releasing her emotionally from her ex-husband completely, so that he had no control over her emotionally anymore, and this set her free to be in control of herself, in control of her own emotions, empowering her to have the confidence to go to her son's wedding with no concerns whatsoever. In fact, feeling positive and happy about the joyous occasion and just being focused on her son and bride and enjoying the day and making the most out of the happy occasion. In fact, this empowered her to shift her focus completely away from her ex-husband and wife and 100% towards the focus of the day, which is her son and her new bride-to-be, which is what the day is all about. It's not about him, her ex-husband, it's about her son and his new wife, and the joy of celebrating this happy union and actually being there 100% for them. When Jane contacted me after the wedding, her joy was palpable. The first words out of her mouth were, "I rocked it." She was so thrilled with herself. She had the best day ever, and the highlight of the day for her was when she recounted the encounter of her ex-husband when she got to the ceremony first and she saw her ex-husband and wife come into the room, and she actually got up and approached them immediately with a big smile on their face, with shoulders back, head held up high, and just greeted them pleasantly and said, "Hi, how you doing?" She even greeted his wife which was she said on the first session that she never wanted to speak to her, and what do you know, now she's talking to his wife, and had a pleasant conversation about the wedding, about the son, and then just ended it with, well, you enjoy your day, and walked off. So she was thrilled at how confident and calm she was, and her confidence levels skyrocketed. She was so proud of herself. That encounter left her feeling empowered, free, and truly done with that chapter in her life. Now she's absolutely free to move forward in her life. She's even now free to be open to being in a relationship if she chooses to, because that fear is no longer there, because she's in control of how she feels. Jane's biggest regret in life was shutting herself off after the divorce. If this story resonates with you and you find yourself in a similar situation, then feel free to reach out to me. I'm here to help. And if you're still here and you're new, I'm Anna Siljama. I'm a certified hypnotherapist, and I specialize in helping highly sensitive people overcome issues just like this one, issues of the heart such as betrayal or anxiety, or even chronic stress and chronic pain. And if you'd like to see more of me and content like this, feel free to subscribe. And if you like this kind of content, make sure to give it a thumbs up to let me know. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.